Ranking new movies released in January from worst to best. Now, January is always a weird month for movies. It's kind of just a dumping ground for films that studios know aren't going to be big hits or award contenders, and it just ends up being a lot of very meh movies, but there's a few surprises. Sadly, Last Place is back in action. This movie was not a surprise in any way, shape, or form. It's another Netflix original action movie where they get two pretty decent sized stars and throw them into one of the most generic stories you've ever seen in your life. This one focuses on Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz playing these retired CIA agents that now have a family and they're just trying to protect them, and they're kind of called back into this line of work because of a bunch of things going on. If you need something for background noise, this will perfectly serve that purpose. Otherwise, this is just really nothing. At number 5 is Wolfman. Again, January horror movies are normally pretty terrible. Think of like Night Swim last year. But this one actually seemed like it had a decent chance to be something creative and unique and a new take on the werewolf story. And yet it does kind of try to be a new fresh take on being like alone in the woods with this monster, but it ended up just being very boring in my opinion, which is one of the worst things your movie can be. There is nothing to grasp onto with any of these characters. It ends up just feeling like a million different horror movies you've already seen before in your life of people in this cabin. The only difference is how the Wolfman actually forms. That's another thing that happens way too late in the movie. 90% of this film is just watching people driving around and getting to a cabin in the woods. The actual Wolfman's not in it until like maybe the last like 30 minutes, and you only see him for very little moments. At number 4, I have You're Cordially Invited, a new Will Ferrell and Reese Witherspoon comedy. I'm pretty sure this just came out yesterday actually on Prime. The movie's about Will Ferrell's daughter and Reese Witherspoon's sister both getting married at the same venue on the same day at this very small place that only really has room for one family because of a mistake in the scheduling, and it kind of is this feud between these two families and trying to make this work, having like dual weddings at the same time. Another one of just your kind of run-of-the-mill comedies. I'm not gonna lie, it's not a good movie in any sense of the way, but Will Ferrell still has the sauce, and there was actually multiple times in this movie where I did chuckle and laugh out loud a little bit just because Will Ferrell on his own is so funny, even though some of the jokes are actually pretty bad. Just his physical performance in some of the scenes is actually kind of making this movie worth a watch. Like I said, I wouldn't say it's a good movie, but there's worse ways to spend like an hour and 40 minutes if you want to check this out. At number 3 is a definite jump up in quality. We got Companion, the new Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid horror thriller is what it's being marketed as, although it's not really horrifying or thrilling in any sense of the way. It's still a very enjoyable movie. And this next one's kind of like a minor spoiler, but it's also like the entire premise of the movie revealed in the trailer, and even this poster you can kind of tell what's going on. Sophie Thatcher is actually playing this AI companion that's essentially like a robot that is just like your girlfriend. Jack Quaid is the one who kind of buys this robot, and the movie kind of deals with her learning that she is a robot and that she's been under his control this entire time, although she thought she was a real human and this was an actual real relationship. Jack Quaid is super unlikable in the best way possible in this movie. Like, you literally want to punch him in the face multiple times, but he's doing a great job. Sophie Thatcher, also really A++ performance in this movie that otherwise is kind of just mediocre. These two performances really hold it up. And what's nice is that this movie definitely plays into some deeper themes, like obviously AI sentience and just abusive relationships in general. There's a lot of that talk going on. But if you want to just turn your brain off and watch like an enjoyable kind of thriller with some exciting kills, you can also just get that. I definitely recommend this. At number 2, I have Dogman. I have a full review up on my channel. I'll put up at the top of the screen now and at the end of the video if you want to check that out. I really enjoyed this movie. It's far from perfect, but it's kind of impossible to be bored with. Like, you are going to have fun watching this movie no matter what. The animation is amazing. A lot of the jokes were actually super funny. Like, I feel like half the jokes in the movie were actually written for the older people in the audience. I'm not sure if all the kids will even get half the jokes, but I was very happy with it. I was unfamiliar. I've never actually read a Dogman book in my life, but this is just such a fun world. Petey the cat being voiced by Pete Davidson as like the main villain was super funny in this movie. The police chief was absolutely hilarious. As I mentioned in my review, I do think this movie's a little brain rotty at times, but thank you guys for informing me that apparently in universe this is actually a comic written by like 10-year-olds, so I guess that does make sense. Even though it's not perfect, I really enjoyed it and honestly might go check out the Dogman books now just because of how fun this movie was. And before number 1, hit that like button and comment your list of any new movies you've seen in January ranked from worst to best. And number 1 goes to the GOATs, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. This did have a limited release in December of last year, but it came out on Netflix wide in January, so I'm counting it as a new January release. And what's there to say about this? Wallace and Gromit has been so solidly amazing for pretty much their entire runtime. There's never a bad film with these two. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, tap above me on screen right now if you want to check out my full-length review for the Dogman movie, and I'll see you guys in the next one.